اوكي تمام. Shall I start webinar?
نعم ممكن. You can start webinar please.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I think we have everybody on board. So I'm going to be the instructor today. My name is Yazan Mahasne. How's everybody?
Good, alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. I think everybody's on board, right? We can get started.
مرحبا. كيف حالك؟
I'm good, alhamdulillah.
Happy to have you with us. Thank you so much again.
Thank you so much.
وياك إبراهيم البدوي من فريق الهاكاثون.
Amazing. So I'll give you a bit of context about myself, what I do on a day-to-day basis. And we're going to be going over, let's say...
Can you just allow me? احنا حنبدأ رسميا like in a couple of minutes بس نعطي فرصة للمزيد من المشاركين يحضروا. احنا المنتورز available في الروم. المشاركين they are still joining signing in. فتحب نعطي wait for a couple of minutes?
Of course, definitely. ما في أي مشكلة.
the plan إن شاء الله the floor is yours today. as I will explain now بس في البداية حابب أبدأ ببريف intro أعرف على المنتورز الموجودين في الغرفة وبعدين I will go through a couple of slides فيها تذكير ببعض الأمور الادمن / business and then we'll hand you the mic وزملاء المنتورز بيكونوا وياه خلال الجلسة to share any non-tech aspects from government innovation or hackathon point of view. Okay.
Amazing.
Yeah, and then when you start, you can again offer a context for them, like what to expect and your background, so they know what kind of support, inshallah, insights they can get from you, what kind of questions they can ask you.
Perfect, inshallah.
Awesome. Okay, I see the numbers are going up. Attendees. Shall we start?
Okay, I think we can get started.
Yeah. Dr. Maysam, green light to start?
Definitely. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. مساءكم سعيد وليلتكم مباركة. Everyone. This is Ibrahim Al-Badawi from the UAE Hackathon team, welcoming you to the virtual tech lab session dedicated to the participants in government innovators and entrepreneurs tracks. قبل ما أواصل حابب أتأكد ممكن أواصل باللغة الإنجليزية في السيشن ولا نقلب عربي إنجليزي؟ المشاركين بليز إذا اللغة الإنجليزية مش مناسبة أو مريحة لحضرتك ممكن you can type. Okay. English is good? تمام. Okay. Thank you so much. So we'll carry on in English, and at any point, you can stop us. We can repeat a point in Arabic or further explain it in Arabic, inshallah. So as I said, this is a hands-on tech lab. And before we start, I just would like to introduce the awesome team we have in the room here. We're starting with the mentors we have with us. So please, Dr. Maysam, and then you introduce the other team members.
Rahim, can you hear me?
Yes, now I can hear you. Can you please, I want everyone in the mentors team just to introduce themselves as name, yeah.
Sure, definitely. So I'll start with myself, Maysam Al-Abbadi, a very proud member of the UAE Hackathon. And why I'm proud? Because of the amazing achievements and the efforts of every single team who has participated in this beautiful journey. And my colleagues who are frontliners and behind the scenes working literally day and night, حتى during Ramadan, just to make this a success. And we're sure that the real success is going to happen on the final day, the final pitches. So please show us your best and come with your best energy, inshallah ta'ala.
Inshallah.
That's about it. So I'll give the mic to my colleague.
Pick
Yes,
one, please.
thank
Yes. No, pick the next colleague, please.
أستاذة عليا الماجد, please.
Thank you, Ibrahim and Maysam. Assalamu alaikum jami'an. My name is Alia. Just to introduce myself in a quick way, I'm the Director of Strategy and an expert of innovation and future foresight, having an experience of 10 years in the government sector and innovation. So I can, I really hope that today I can share the knowledge and the experience of innovation to the teams and as well, give them a lift with such energy to have the best, inshallah, in this hackathon. Thank you all. And I will go to Sama. You can introduce yourself.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My name is Sama Zaki Abdin Abdelghani. I am a proudly teacher mentor in ESE, Emirates of School Establishment, and I'm really grateful to be part of this amazing team of Hackathon UAE. And I'm really so grateful for that opportunity given to me to support all the teams from all tracks. And I wish all the best for every member. And thank you so much.
Thank you. And you can choose your next colleague.
Of course, Mr. Nizar. Mr. Nizar?
Yeah, that's his username.
Sorry.
I prefer to keep Yazan to the last. He's our main instructor today, tech expert.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other mentor in?
Okay, I think that's it for now. Some people might join us later. So I'll introduce our colleague Nizar in a bit. Sorry, Yazan in a bit. But for now, I want to have a look at the attendees. MashaAllah, we have good number here. So I want to do a quick round. Just your name, please, and your team and which track. Shall we start with you, Amr? This has to be a sprint. Amr, can you share in writing? Oh wait, we are in webinar mode, so probably you can't turn on the mic. Okay. Amr, you are with us here, right? Okay, cool. We have a webinar set up, so please, okay, yes. So please, can you change your name in the team, your name in Zoom, add your team name to your name. So your first name and team name, if possible, if you can. If you can, then that's fine. You can leave it as it is. Okay. We got Ms. Yasser from Tedra. Thank you so much, Yasser Muhammad, for joining us. Now, let's proceed with a brief intro before starting the actual technology hands-on. As I said, this technology lab session is dedicated to you, innovators from the government sector and also from the entrepreneurs track in this hackathon. As a reminder, this is the criteria you have seen times and times with us. And I just want to highlight why this session today is significant to your idea, your solution. Basically, it will help you to decide on how to use technology and actually how to use it to build your prototype or MVP, which can hit more than one criteria. So obviously, you can aim at that 20% of innovative use of AI and technology, but also it will help you in creating an MVP and prototype. It can show the judges that solution is feasible because they can see something. And if you decide to use the technology to play with the data, then this can further explain data utilization. And even better, using AI can help a lot in achieving the zero bureaucracy goal. Obviously, when you use more creative tools like data visualization or you design screens for your mobile app, this can make your pitch more creative. So what I'm trying to say here is that if you make the best out of this session and the support of our colleague Yazan and his teams, then you have a better chance in showing the judges how your solution got a good chance to solve the challenge you picked. And in the process, you get better score, and inshallah, you'll be selected as a winner. And this lab today will have other 2 labs on Saturday and Sunday. Registration details and links will always be shared by email, so please don't miss them. The difference is on Saturday, the lab will be dedicated to AI tools, while on Sunday will be focused on data visualizations. Today's session is a mix of all these technologies. I will leave it to Yazan in a few minutes to further explain when he starts the session. And we have also a personalized mentorship session on Friday, tomorrow, with our colleague and expert, Walid al-Qrashi. He's also talk about using these tools to create your MVP or prototype. So you can book your session through this QR code or this link. So basically, these days, between today and Sunday, you can have an intense or focused rounds of support, of mentorship, of training on how to use technology and how to show it in your solution. So please make the most out of it. Now, one more thing, and that's a very critical date. As you know, the next big thing for you is the final pitch. So we'll finish the mentorship and the training by Sunday, and then inshallah, happy Eid, everyone. You can enjoy your Eid break while still working on your solutions. But then we'll meet again on April the 17th. On that day, you are expected to come and pitch your solution in person. You will get the email with all the details about the exact time, location, etc. But this is the date. So please book it on your calendar. That's the day in which you will pitch the idea or the solution. And then the judges will make the final decision and pick the winners of the UAE Hackathon 2024 on these 2 tracks. So basically, you got like 2 weeks to have your solutions, your pitches ready. So I will stop here. Now I would like to introduce our colleague, Yazan. He will introduce himself and then share with you what to expect from this session and be the lead instructor for the rest of this session. Yazan, over to you and welcome to our Virtual Tech Lab.
Thank you very much, Ibrahim, for the introduction. So a little bit about myself. My name is Yazan Mahasne. I'm an ex, let's say, Amazon employee. I also used to work with Expedia. So one of the main, let's say, successful achievements that we've done in Amazon was we actually helped bring Amazon over to the Middle East. I was part of Project Sunrise back in the day. And right now, I'm currently head of user experience over at Digital Lab. We mainly service to the government sector. So one of the main topics or something that's very crucial in, let's say, any innovation or hackathon would be bringing in, again, for today's topic, it's going to be prototyping with Figma. And Figma is going to be a design tool. I'm just going to share my screen real quick. Okay.
Yazan, a
Yeah,
bit of an admin detail. If you can just please adjust your name, username. It's
of course.
showing Nizar, which
Oh, is that me? Okay. I'm not sure how to change my name here.
yeah, if you can click on the three dots on your box, and then there's an option for change name or change. Let me do it here.
Of course.
Yeah, awesome.
Oh, I think I see it. Yes. Okay, I think the name has been changed now.
Yes, thank you.
Perfect. All right. So for just going over today's session, we're going to be going over, let's say, the power of using ChatGPT, specifically DALI, in terms of creating a mood board. And creating a mood board is we're going to focus more into how do we breathe in certain design elements and try to give in new life. Again, prototyping is not necessarily tied to a website or a mobile application. It's going to be more into, let's say, more of an everyday life in terms of animating and making something more lively. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen just to give an overview. So here's our current topic right now. Okay, I hope everybody can see my screen. So prototyping in Figma. Again, Figma is a design software that you'd have to actually create an account. The drafts section is going to be for free, so it's going to be a non-paid platform that everybody can go ahead and create an account on. Hopefully, by the end of today's session, everybody would have a Figma account and just play around with the tools. And first and foremost, I think what I want to showcase in terms of, let's say, the power of Figma. So, for example, once we're done with today's session, inshallah, we can create, let's say, a nice animated website, such as something like this. This is basically breathing in life over to, let's say, the website, instead of just presenting something that's very static, something that's very not really animated. And also for, let's say, our mobile application, we want to make sure that users can actually scroll through the application. We can have certain fixed elements. That way, when you're presenting for your hackathon, you can actually see how the real world mobile applications behave and how do we transition this over to, let's say, a mobile application from a design perspective. And here's another scrollable, let's say, interface. So first and foremost, what we are going to be doing is I'm going to be sharing my screen over to, let's say, ChatGPT. And I want to type in some basic prompts. Let me just share in my entire screen. Currently, right now, I'm sharing my screen. So as you can see here before me, this is DALI. It is part of, let's say, ChatGPT. And what I want to do is I want to build out my mood board. And just so to give some context on what is a mood board, it's usually used in the art industry, okay, not necessarily tied to UX. It's a amalgamation of pictures, colors, references, so you can sort of build out your mobile application or your website in our case. So I'm going to be typing in a prompt. What I have in mind is, let's say I want to have a colorful, let's say, Nike shoe website. Again, I don't sponsor Nike in any way. With, let's say, large typography. Have to, and the most importantly, you'd have to input to generate an image. Once I'm done with inputting, let's say, that prompt, we should give it some time in terms of generating that image. That way we can basically collect some images for that mood board that we're going to build out. And again, most people would be concerned with AI taking over people's jobs and whatnot, but I believe that the difference between people who are going to be using AI and who are not is the person who's going to be using AI will basically speed up their workflow. The purpose of AI is not, again, not to replace human creativity or human interactions or elements. The main sole purpose of AI is just to basically empower users in terms of speeding up their workflow. So right now we have some interesting ideas. We can basically copy this image, go back to our Figma board. And so right now I've created a mood board. It is currently a blank page. What I can do is I can actually make a selection. And this selection will just help me determine what I'm, just to basically organize certain images. So if I were to like paste that image, sorry, I'll just minimize it using the Shift Control key. I'll have a collection and I can label it, let's say colors, for example. Now, this is something that we could use. It's more of a poster, not necessarily a website. And I'll also minimize this. And this is where I would start to build out the inspiration for having my website. I think I'll just label this as a website. I'll create another board using my Shift Control keyboard, or I can just copy and paste, Control V. Now delete these. And I can name this, let's say, mobile application. And I'll go back to DALL-E and tell them to generate messages app, which is more simple. Minimalistic as well. Minimalistic. And something that's more simple. And I'll type in that prompt and see what DALL-E would give me. So while waiting for this to load, we're sort of formulating the basis for the AI prompts. So we are sort of getting an idea of what we want. Again, what AI generates isn't going to be the final product. This is going to be up to, let's say, the designer and how they want to improve or take some certain elements. If I were to, let's say, utilize a certain color schema, I would make a triangle. And I'll sort of build out my canvas by taking these colors that I like, using my eyedropper tool over here. So these are going to be, let's say, the main fundamental, let's say, colors that I want to use, and the logo placement. So again, it's about structure and layout in terms of getting the right typography. So here's something interesting that DALL-E has generated, going back to the Messages app. We can minimize this. Again, if there's going to be other corner radiuses that we don't need, some excess screens, we can just simply minimize this. If you're using a Mac, you can hold the Command key. If you're in Windows, you can use the Control key. Just sort of get the layout. So here we have, again, it's not going to be a perfect result in terms of, let's say, what is going to be generated for AI, but it gives us a basic layout, what needs to be there. So for this, I'm going to take a screenshot just to speed up the mood board gathering process. And here we have somewhat of a, let's say, mood board. So what I'm going to be doing here is I've actually sort of gathered some ideas from other, let's say, sources. I'm gonna increase this, make this a bit bigger. And what I want to do is I want to have a very simplified messages app that behaves and scrolls the way it would do it in a real world scenario, such as, let's say, for example, WhatsApp or whatnot. So I have a blank empty canvas and I want to build this from scratch. So I would put in my type tool and I'll just type in, let's say, messages. This is how it will usually be done on, let's say, an iOS mobile platform. And some people would be, let's say, intimidated in terms of using, let's say, icon libraries. I think this will speed up the process, even though we have our own icon library. So I'm going to look for an icon that would represent adding. I believe the icon would be, where is that icon? Yes, this icon over here. I'll just paste that in. Now it's a bit small. The default would be 24 pixels. And what I want to do is I want to increase this. And again, prototyping is not only tied to mobile apps or websites. It could be for presentations and whatnot. So I just sort of build out my layout, okay? So we'll imagine that these are going to be people. We can fill the data in. And one important thing is, since the thing about Figma artboards is it actually crops out that image. And I really want to see what's going to be the next stage. So what I can do is I can click on the artboard and there's an option here called clip content. I can just simply remove this so I can sort of continue and see where am I going at. And again, I'm going to continue with this over here. I'm just building up my layout of the application. Keep in mind that the padding should be consistent, so no 33s or 32s. It should be around 40s or 30s. 15s are also good for the padding. And now I'll basically group this. Now I'll click on right click and I'll group this selection. So right now, I'll just remove this. Just add this as a group. So currently right now it's clipped. What I want to do is I want to make sure that this would scroll left and right. So what I'll do is I would actually go to my prototype settings. But before that, I'd have to make this as a frame. Without framing certain, let's say, elements, you would not be getting specific options. So right now, the option overflow is going to be there. So what I can do is I can actually click on horizontal. Now just try to test it out and see if it's going to be working. The vertical, both directions. So these are different types of options where you would have, I just want to remove the clip to make sure that this is what I see, is what I'm going to be getting. And I sort of want to reduce the frame to be inside, let's say, the frame itself. So that way, you would have something like this. You can actually scroll through different types of animations in terms of behaving. And again, testing out your prototype, making sure the layout is consistent. I just want to move this in the bottom because usually in terms of the Apple standards and Apple guidelines would have around 68 pixels or more. That way it will not be conflicting with the camera. So what I want to do here is I'm going to be taking, let's say, the footer. Again, these components can be ready from a Figma library. You can actually access a iOS library that currently exists on Figma. What I want to do here is I want to put this over here in the bottom. I'm going to scroll this through. Right now, this is currently located at the bottom. If I go back, it's static. It doesn't really move. As you can see here, this should be a sticky component. The sticky component is a component that actually follows where the user goes to in terms of scrolling. So what I would do here is I would go to prototype. I would go to, so scroll with parent is scrolling on the page itself. So what I want to do is I want to have it fixed in place. That way, it's always going to be present. And again, I can specify, if I go back to design, if it's going to be a top or a bottom scroll. If it's going to be top, it won't show. So I'll just specify this is going to be a bottom sticky component over here. That way we can create somewhat of a larger than life, let's say, component. Now, sometimes if I want the messages to be sticky as well, I would just group these and I would make another box. That way, because if I don't do this box, I'll just show everybody how it'll look like. It'll be like there's nothing, there's no layer underneath the messages and the icon. So I just sort of want to hide this and make another, let's say, rectangle box inside and group them. Go back to the settings, fixed. This should be on the top layer. Okay. That way I would have something that looks more akin to how a mobile app would behave. Okay. So this is it for the mobile app. And again, going to the next, let's say, session is I want to sort of get into the rhythm of, I'm going to just delete everything. And these are, let's say, very basic, let's say, mobile interactions. Now, for building presentations, for building, let's say, websites or any type of interaction, we want to start to, let's say, do some basic shapes. So, for example, I want to talk about smart animations as well. So I would have this, let's say, rectangle. And I'll create another, let's say, I'll just copy that layer and paste it. And what I want to do is, there's something on Figma. It's a very powerful interaction element or interaction tool. It's called smart animations. And smart animations would help automatically animate that certain object depending on the naming. So for example, they share both names. So they're both called rectangle 1. But if I manipulate the properties, if I make this into a circle by using the corner radius tool, and I would link these prototypes. So here, I'm going to link these two together. And I'm going to select, usually by the default, it starts off as instant. This won't animate the way that I want it to. So I'm just going to load up the interaction real quick. If I click on it, it's just going to be a very static, very boring animation. What I want to do is I want to select Smart Animate. And here it'll give me some custom options. So if I want it to be, let's say, custom spring, this is one. I'd recommend this one. That way, by having that option selected, you would be having more of a, it'll sort of grow into that property. So what we can do more is we can actually manipulate the size of that object. We can make this 20, make this a bit smaller. And that way we can sort of get a feel of how we want to manipulate certain objects. So I would increase the corner radius. Again, these are just basic, simple shapes. And I want to have this looped back. So if I restart the prototype, I would sort of get something that grows in properties in terms of having a smart animation. This is the difference between having something that's transitional, that's very, let's say, static, over to something that actually takes the form and takes the shape of what you're trying to build as a prototype. Here's one example. Now, for the website, now we've established the ChatGDP mood board. So let's take this mood board and go back to our website. Now, for our website, we actually have ready-made assets. Okay. Because I won't be going too much in depth in terms of layout, in terms of typography. Let's say that this website already exists. It's a static website, but I sort of want to animate this. I want to make this very similar to what was presented just now. How do I go ahead and do this? So utilizing smart animations, and smart animations was used previously on what we've done in defining certain properties. So we go back to the web, okay? And I hope I'm not going too fast. If I'm going too fast, please let me know. So we would take, so this naming convention is very similar to this one. So I'll just call this logo, okay? And I'd also rename this as logo. There's some naming management that you have to do to be able to basically get that animation the way that you want to. So I just want to test this out. I'm going to play this. I'm going to start a new, let's say, flow. And what this does is it gives me, let's say, demo. So once I play the prototype, for example, over here, it gives me options and where I want to start. So the sample was what was advertised in the beginning of the intro. And here, the demo is the one that we've recently done. So if I click on anywhere on the screen, nothing sort of happens because I haven't assigned anything yet. So what I want to do is I want to go back, link this together. So you get these like spaghetti strands. So what you want to do is you want to link this over to the screen. You sort of want to smart animate it. So what happens then if I just restart the prototype? It would give me the logo placement to go. I'm going to restart this by pressing R on my keyboard. And I click anywhere. So that logo placement will go exactly where I want to. If I change the name, I call it 111, for example, nothing happens. It's very tied to naming. So naming the assets that you have in mind, just naming them correctly. So I change the name back to logo, would animate it the way that I want to. Now, how do I animate, let's say, the text? So the way, again, understanding how smart animations work is it takes the naming convention of assets and it takes the placement of assets that were in the previous screen before that. So if I were to place this here, and if I were to move this up, all the way up, again, utilizing click, will show me all of the stuff that I have. Let me just remove these. And I'll put this all the way up on the screen. So that way, if I unclip it, it will no longer be visible. And I'll just restart the animation. It basically comes from on top. And if I take this and I put this on the side, it will remember the placement of the next screen, which is this one, and it will come from the side. This is the way that you can influence the interaction of how your elements will come into the website itself. So I'm going to speed this up. So for me personally, I'd like to make the text a bit smaller. I'd like to reduce the opacity. That way we'll give it some more flair. So the opacity is basically something like this. We put this on top. Let's just see how it goes. That way it's scaling, it's becoming bigger, and then it's gonna become better in color. So that's one way to do it. So I'll take these elements and I'll continue. So this, I want this to come from, let's say, the bottom. I want the size of the shoe to be a little bit smaller. So when it starts out, not too small. And I'll just hide this. Sort of like hiding stuff under your bed if you don't want to clean your room. And let's see how it goes. So that's one way to animate that website. Now, of course, you can also influence the background if I connect these two together by changing the placement. I could sort of, sometimes we want to give it more of a perspective blur. That way, some objects that will be a bit farther can, not the background blur, layer blur. Yes. So if it's farther away, you get this blurred perspective. And if the object is going to be near, then it'll focus more into the lens. It's just how the human eye would react to actual elements. So I would take these elements and I'll put this here. I'll sort of hide it away. Now the shoe is already defined by the name. They're already linked, and we go to the next slide. Just hide this. That way, so if the naming convention is not defined, what we can do here is just remove these, put them on the side, take these elements, and just rearrange it the way that we want to. I'll just make this a bit here. And that way we can go back in the prototype, sort of see the transition. I could also manipulate the transitional elements. So for example, if I wanted to be a little bit more faster, more smoother, a little bit more bouncy, this can also be done. And if I were to do the opposite, to have this like bounce effect, it will be a bit faster. But we just want to try to find the middle ground for that sort of animation. I'm going to continue over here. We could also influence the background of certain, let's say, elements. So for example, if I were to create this, I would take the background here, and I'll just sort of remove these elements, just tuck them away. Make this a bit bigger. And again, it's always one thing to consider for prototyping is object manipulation. Naming convention and placement is very important. I'm just gonna reshare my screen to just focus on Figma because I think that would be better. Okay. Let me connect these two together so we can just change the background. So again, let's repeat the prototype. Let's see if this is exactly what we wanted to behave. I have this transition, we have this transition, and then the color in the background would change. That's one way to basically go about animating, be it a slideshow, be it a website, or having certain interactions for the mobile application. I'm going to pause here. I think we can leave maybe 15 minutes for questions or let's say any questions that anybody in the audience might have. And I'd be happy to entertain. So any questions from the audience? Okay. We have 12 participants. Nobody has any questions about certain elements in terms of, let's say, animations or certain behaviors on mobile or presentations. Feel free. I mean, don't be shy.
There's a question here about the frame difference.
Sure.
Yeah, can you explain session frame difference?
The frame difference. Okay, I think so. In referring to this specific frame, for example. Yeah. So one thing about, let's say, frames, why do we do frames? Usually on websites, it's going to be one frame. Okay, so you have one big frame for regular websites. But the thing is, for Figma, you sort of want to cheat the animation to having, because the way that Figma operates, if we go back to, let's say, the web asset, why are we doing it frame by frame? we're sort of like cheating the elements, because if I were to do this, to have one entire frame, the elements will be, let's say, you cannot manipulate the placement of the elements. So there's no way for Figma to recognize what will be the next sequence. So this is why we'd have to actually come up with more of a framing module, because Figma does not react to, let's say, certain placements of the mouse or whatnot. It doesn't necessarily have to cheat that interaction in play. So I hope that answers your questions as to why we're having to do, let's say, frame by frame animations. But usually, let's say if you're going to be prototyping for the hackathon, I would recommend to actually build out the website first. So I would take these elements and just put them here. And I'd have, let's say, different components as well. So you can sort of get a look and feel for how your website is going to be designed. That would be my number one advice. So once you have, let's say, you're happy with the website in terms of the layout, typography, you can then start to frame those key elements. So I'll just take this. Again, the default size is always going to be 1440 by 900. Always designed for the worst case scenario in mind for the screen, which is going to be the smallest screen size, which should be a standard laptop. That way we can start to frame these elements. I think there's a layer I didn't take. I think it was these layers. And yeah, that way you can slowly build out your website as you go. Any other questions in terms of framing? And I hope I answered that question in terms of why we're doing it frame by frame.
Yeah, very clear. And there is another question here. If I want to add a pin effect on map, how can I animate and show?
Okay, very good. We can do a very quick, let's say, walkthrough right now. So to have that pin animate effect, I'm going to go to Google Map just to take a quick. Okay. So it's hard for me to navigate with the zoom. Okay, so here we have a map, for example, of Dubai. For the pin, I think we can use, let's say, and again, it's the same principles as naming conventions and having certain interactions. So just trying to find the pin. There we go. So here on the map, I'll just make this a bit bigger. I'll try to just reduce, just for contrast and the demo's sake, just try to reduce this. What I would do is, I would basically try to create a, like, let's say an effect. I would make the opacity a bit smaller. I would create another effect. Again, we can change these colors. So for example, I want this to be purple. That's a bit pink. I would create another circle inside it, and I'd group them. What I could do is, I'd have to influence these elements. So for example, I'll just make it a bit more reduced. I would make this smaller. And I'll put this, let's say I would hide this. Again, we're just hiding elements. I'd link it. I would select Smart Animate again. We could have it move in this time. That way it will actually move in from top to bottom. Again, we'll see how it goes. We click play. Now we can hide this, but just to give, it's not what was intended. I think we'll just go back to the Smart Animate ease in. Yeah, that's what that was for. Always select Smart Animate. So you can get a PowerPoint presentation. So you get something like this. It's not the best, but I think I just have to manipulate. Make the opacity 0. Make this a little bit bigger. Reduce the opacity a bit. Again, it's trial and error. So what you have to do for animating, you have to see how to look like. And if I want this to disappear, I could basically have it like this. Just reduce the opacity. What I can do is I can actually link this to be a set timer. So after delay, so if I want this to finish after a certain amount, so 0.3 milliseconds, this will automatically transition to the next effect. So I don't have to click anywhere. So for example, oops, if I load up the map, okay, I click anywhere, it'll slowly disappear. So you'd have somewhat of that animation effect. It's a very basic, let's say, map animation for the pin, for the drop pin. But it's the same, let's say, focusing principle. You're just hiding objects, you're manipulating the naming conventions, and making sure that you're manipulating the properties of that asset. Any other questions? Again, that does not to be animated or transition or prototype related. It could be where do you live or whatnot.
Yeah, this is really very clear. Thank you so much.
Amazing.
I'm not sure if we have any more questions.
Okay, I think we have 6 minutes more, but if there's no more question, I think that this concludes, let's say, the overall let's say demo of prototyping on Figma. Let's go cycle back to the the cover here. And yeah, feel free to reach out if anybody has any, let's say, and best of luck with the hackathon. I'll stop sharing now. All right. Thank you everybody for your time, and uh, happy Eid, inshallah.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mr. Yazan. I am sure that we can also receive any kind of questions relating to the hackathon in general, not only about Figma. So we are here to support any kind of regarding the hackathon presentation, pitching.
I guess there is one more question in the chat I've seen is, can we add some sound effects using Figma?
Sound effects. So sound effects, again, for videos, it's not necessarily sound effects as a music file. What people usually do, and for me, I sort of cheat this out, is you have to add a video at the background, and then you'd have to hide it in a layer. But this is for the paid edition for Figma. Figma requires a subscription. I believe it's $14 a month to have 4K videos or sound on certain files. But you could always have a player on standby on the side, and you can present in Figma. That would be a more cost-effective way.
Okay, so today's features are all free, right?
Correct. Yes, they're all free. It's non-paid. I think the only let's say paid feature would be just the 4K or the video and just having more editors on the same file. I think that's about it, but there's no other restrictions. Everything that you get in the paid version should be on the free version as well, except for the video.
Mhm. And regarding the payment, we have received another question regarding ChatGPT generating images. So is it paid version of ChatGPT or is it free? To
Yeah,
be
so
sure, I have answered that question already, but I need to be sure of the answer.
of course, so for ChatGPT having DALI, which is the image generator, that is a paid version. I believe it costs $20 a month. But again, there's if we're looking for a more cost-effective way in terms of generating a mood board, again, this is for AI. AI is not really necessarily you get what you want. It just helps you speed up the process of trying to somewhat get the idea in place. But I think Google Images could be a cost-effective way as well.
Okay, perfect. I can see really very amazing questions from participants. It shows that they are really very interested about prototyping and how they can develop their own visualization of the solution. So, do you recommend other than Figma to create a prototype? Do we have other software?
Of course. Well, now for other softwares, XD, which was the Adobe equivalent, again, now Figma's power lies in its simplicity. I would recommend it for its collaborating, let's say, efforts. There are other software, but I think XD died out a couple of months back. Adobe basically killed the product. And I think Figma is the best in the market, but if we were to explore other alternatives, let's say for presentations, because Figma is a rounded tool for presenting, for mobile apps, for websites. If you want something for presenting, maybe of course PowerPoint, everybody's familiar with that. For the actual prototyping, there is some more advanced tools, which is, let's say, Framer is one. Framer is a no-code tool that actually lets you put out websites live with zero coding skills required. But it's very complicated. It's not really beginner friendly. Figma is more of, and again, you cannot use Framer by itself. You'd have to use Figma in order to visualize the website or well, mainly website that you want to build and to ship out the assets over to Framer. So that's one another tool. I think we'll just stick to
Okay,
Figma.
And
so
if I
it's
may
user
add,
friendly.
yeah,
Yeah,
and
go
if I
ahead.
may add, yes, my dear, is I guess the key words here is simplicity and user friendly. I believe Figma is a very user-friendly tool to develop such a prototype. It's very simple and clear steps of how to manage and develop a prototype. Yes.
Exactly. Because you don't want to be restricted. Sometimes with using Figma, like unlike Photoshop, unlike Illustrator, it's a very, let's say, there is a huge learning curve, but in order to make or create simple products, you'd have to use simple tools. Again, simplicity does not always mean less complicated. You can really have outstanding, let's say, visual UI and user experience on Figma itself. But I think, yeah, that basically is a very good example of
It
simplicity.
doesn't require high-tech skills. Anybody can use it anyway.
Exactly, yes. Even some business people use it for presentations these days.
Mhm. Very good. We have a question regarding BVM. Um, I really recommend that you can book my dear for tomorrow's session. Mr. Ibrahim have announced in this session. Tomorrow there's a dedicated session about it in detail, so you can book for tomorrow so you have all details about it, inshallah.
Okay, I think we're at time. Thank you everybody for your contribution and the questions, of course. It'll make like there was an actual audience that was being presented to. All right, and everybody have a wonderful rest of the night. Thank you.
Thank you all, and good luck to the all participants.
Best of
Thank you
luck.
so much.
Thank you. Bye.
All right, bye-bye.
Assalamu alaikum. You're welcome.